Long before the ticking of gears and the swinging of pendulums, in a land ruled by gods and guided by stars, time flowed like the Nile itself, eternal, mysterious, and sacred. In the heart of ancient Egypt, where granite obelisks pierced the heavens and temple walls whispered prayers of the cosmos, a curious vessel stood in the shadows, not forged for ritual nor for storage, but for something far more elusive, measuring the invisible rhythm of time. These vessels, known today as clepsydra, water clocks, did not chime, did not ring. They whispered. Drop by drop, they marked the passage of hours not with sound, but with silence. It was not just technology, it was prophecy carved into clay, a sacred balance between astronomy, hydraulics, and divination. Who crafted the first one? A priest, a scholar, a god in disguise? And how, amidst the sands and stars, did they achieve such mesmerizing accuracy? This is not just a story of invention. It is a descent into chambers sealed for millennia, a study of forgotten equations hidden beneath lotus petals and starlight. As we travel back into temple shadows and follow the trail of ancient droplets, we may find not only the blueprint of the water clock, but the very soul of how the ancients perceived time itself. Let us return to the land of Ra, where time once dripped from alabaster bowls, and secrets flowed with the water. Time in ancient Egypt was not merely a concept, it was a divine force. Known as Jet and Nehe, time was both eternal and cyclical, mirroring the Nile's seasonal floods. It was worshipped, observed, and above all, measured. But how do you measure the divine? The sundial captured the light of Ra, but what of the hours cloaked in darkness beneath the lunar gaze? Enter the clepsydra, a water clock born not of mechanics, but of balance. Its structure was deceptively simple, a carved stone or ceramic vessel with precise markings within and a small hole beneath through which water could steadily escape or enter. And yet, in its simplicity lay its wonder. With each droplet that fell, a priest marked not just an hour, but a cosmic alignment. The earliest references to Egyptian water clocks date to the reign of Amenhotep III, circa 1400 BCE, though whispers suggest their existence even earlier in the sacred temples of Karnak and Edfu. Used primarily by priest astronomers, these devices regulated the night watches, temple rituals, and even star observations. In the sanctuary's inner sanctum, the ticking of time was replaced by the dripping of water. Unlike sundials, which danced with the sun, the clepsydra was loyal to the shadows. Whether wrapped in fog or sealed within a chamber, it delivered precision unfazed by clouds or eclipse. Its purpose was not secular, it was sacred. Timekeeping in this context was an offering, a discipline reserved for those who interpreted the will of the cosmos. The bowl itself was a testament to Egyptian craftsmanship. Many were inscribed not only with hour markers, but with invocations. Please to Thoth, the god of wisdom and measurement, to keep time pure. Some bore zodiacal symbols, others reflected lunar cycles. No two were identical, each vessel a unique conduit between earth and eternity. But why such precision? Because in ancient Egypt, timing was everything. The movement of the stars dictated when to sow and harvest, when to crown a pharaoh, and when to speak the names of the dead. To be early was folly, to be late was sin. The Nile kept its secrets well. But within these quiet clocks, the ancients found a voice, one that spoke through water, whispered in darkness, and kept the rhythm of the gods. In the stillness of the temple, time did not pass. It was summoned, and those who summoned it were not mere observers, but initiates in a sacred science. They were the priests of precision, guardians of the clepsydrae, and custodians of Egypt's celestial harmony. Among the ranks of temple functionaries, the horologian priest held a station of high esteem. Tasked with regulating rituals, aligning offerings with star phases, and calculating divine hours, their work was silent yet monumental. They moved not with haste, but with ritualistic calm, guided by stars, shadows, and water. One miscalculated drop, and an entire rite could fall out of alignment with the heavens. Each clepsydra was more than a tool. It was a pact, a covenant between mortal and divine, where accuracy honored the gods and imprecision invited cosmic disharmony. This sacred duty was passed from master to apprentice, not through books, but through demonstration, by touch, by ear, by the feel of the water's pull and the vessel's breath. In the temple of Amun at Karnak, legend holds that the night was divided into 12 hours, each monitored by a guardian priest using a water clock. These hours were not equal by modern standards. They swelled and shrank with the seasons, adapting to the changing length of night. Thus, the priests had to recalibrate their clepsydrae continuously, ensuring that time remained aligned with the world above. This adjustment required knowledge not only of the stars, but of hydraulic behavior, vessel shape, ambient temperature, and lunar tides. The best horologists could predict how a single degree of desert heat would affect the water's viscosity, and thus the pace of time. They were not engineers, not magicians, but something in between. Their cloaks bore symbols of Thoth and Seshat, gods of timekeeping and writing. Their hands never trembled, for they held not only vessels of stone, but the rhythm of the divine in fragile balance. A priest once whispered, "To command time is not to hold power, but to hold reverence." And so they watched, listened, waited. As the water dropped and the hours dissolved, they moved with the flow, not to resist it, but to honor it. Their legacy is not written in books, but in shadows, etched onto alabaster bowls and passed through ritual. To them, time was not a commodity, it was a communion. What shape does an hour take when it drips in silence? To the ancient Egyptians, it was not round like a clock face, nor linear like a timeline. It was curved, deliberate, and flowing, like the sacred river that mirrored the heavens. Each clepsydra was a vessel of geometry. Its form was never arbitrary. Some were hemispherical, others conical, each curve meticulously calculated to reflect the volume of water needed for seasonal hours. Time, in this sense, was not fixed. It expanded with summer nights and contracted in winter's grasp. Thus, the geometry of the clepsydra had to adapt, not just to water, but to the cosmos. On the inner wall of each vessel, inscriptions marked the passage of hours, not at equal intervals, but with subtle variance. These lines compensated for the increasing flow rate as the water level dropped, a steeper slope at the top, more gentle at the base. The bowl itself was a map of flowing time. The priests who carved these vessels were artisans and astronomers both. To engrave a mark was to define a celestial correspondence. 1 hour might align with Sirius rising, another with Orion's belt crossing the meridian. The clepsydra was, in essence, a celestial translator, turning the arc of the stars into drops of water. Mathematics in ancient Egypt was sacred, never sterile. The cubit, the sect, the digit, All were units not only of measure, but of meaning. The volume of water per hour could be derived from lunar cycles and planetary alignments. It is whispered that some vessels held embedded gemstones, not for decoration, but to mark solstice hours, where time bent in ritual arcs. Later, in the Greco-Roman world, engineers would marvel at the clepsydra's adaptability. But it was the Egyptians who first curved time into clay, who understood that time was not uniform, but breathing. The geometry of the hour was a philosophy in form. No sundial could function in darkness. No calendar could speak the minute, but a bowl of water, properly shaped, could whisper the hour when even the gods slept. Here, time was no tyrant, it was sculpture. In a realm where the sun was a god, what power lingered in the darkness? While Ra illuminated the day, it was in the folds of night that deeper mysteries emerged. The water clock, faithful even in shadow, became a tool not just of measurement, but of revelation. Egyptian temples were designed as mirrors of the cosmos. Light transitioned to darkness as one moved inward, from the bustling courtyards into the sanctum's breathless hush. There, cloaked in incense and starlight, time was tracked not by sight, but by sound and flow. In these silent chambers, the clepsydra reigned supreme. Its rhythm, the steady drip of water into a lower basin, was more than a signal. It was a chant. Each droplet fell like a syllable in a divine language, forming sentences only the priesthood could read. They did not merely count hours, they interpreted omens. A faster drip might suggest divine haste. A slower stream might indicate displeasure from the gods. During rituals of prophecy, the vessel would be watched not only for measurement, but for signs. If water darkened unnaturally, or the bowl trembled without wind, it was recorded as a message. At eclipses, or when Sirius first pierced the sky before dawn, sacred watches were kept with clepsydrae, timing every sacred utterance with unnerving exactness. The goddess Seshat, mistress of writing and wisdom, was often depicted recording the passage of stars and events, her quill suspended like the water's fall. To her followers, the water clock was an extension of her voice. Where written language ended, time began to speak. Some scholars believe that certain clepsydras were carved with hidden channels, mystical mechanisms that altered flow only at certain celestial alignments. Whether this is truth or legend, the fact remains. The Egyptians saw time as a veil through which gods spoke, and the clepsydra as the tear that opened it. In darkness, the eye closes, but the mind awakens. And in the silent pulse of falling water, the ancients found more than hours. They found answers. The temples of Egypt were more than structures. They were machines of meaning, each corridor aligned with starlight, each inscription a fragment of code, and deep within their stone lungs, beneath the clamor of ritual and the gaze of statues, secrets whispered through the drip of water. Archaeologists today often focus on monumental elements, columns, obelisks, sarcophagi, but scattered among the fragments lie the remnants of clepsydrae, some intact, others reduced to shards. What's peculiar is that these remnants are frequently found near subterranean chambers, as if the clocks themselves were meant to measure not just time, but transitions between worlds. In the temple of Edfu, a chamber exists where no sunlight ever reaches. The walls are carved with instructions detailing rituals of watching the hours in darkness. There, beneath layers of soot and limestone dust, lay the broken base of a clepsydra. its outer surface etched with lunar glyphs, its base warped by heat. What happened here? Was it used in rites of death, in initiations, or was it simply forgotten? Some believe certain water clocks were hidden deliberately, encoded with secret flows designed to reveal sacred times known only to high priests. One theory proposes a clepsydra embedded in a wall of the temple itself, the vessel hidden behind stone panels, accessible only at solstice when shadow angles align perfectly to reveal its presence. And then there are the rumors, papyrus texts referencing the echo vessel, a clepsydra said to measure not hours but intentions. It was said to weep when danger neared the pharaoh and remain dry when peace reigned. Such myths drift between magic and metaphor, but one truth remains. The Egyptians buried their knowledge not to erase it, but to preserve it for the worthy. Today, many clepsydrae sit in museums, their mystery obscured by glass cases and white labels. But once they pulsed with purpose, ticking in the tomb of time, drip by drip, revealing what stone could not. To truly understand them, we must listen not just to the water, but to the silence between the drops. To many, water is chaos, fluid, shifting, impossible to tame. But to the ancient Egyptians, water was logic made liquid, and when poured into the right vessel, it became a language that spoke in measures, ratios, and divine equations. Long before the Greeks formalized geometry, Egyptian scribes were recording volumetric calculations, balancing equations of flow. The clepsydra was their calculator. With its internal markings and carefully shaped chambers, it allowed the invisible passage of time to be translated into measurable units, predictable, consistent, and profound. Each mark inside the clock was based not on seconds or minutes, but on a hierarchy of sacred numbers. 12 for the hours of night, 3 for the Trinity of gods, 72 for the deacons, star clusters that divided the year. The flow of water was measured in volume per unit time, but the time itself was wrapped in celestial context. Priests and engineers collaborated to determine the necessary hole diameter to produce a steady outflow, compensating for gravity, fluid pressure, and vessel shape. The results? Astonishing. Some ancient clepsydrae maintained accuracy within minutes over several hours, a feat not rivaled again until the mechanical clocks of the Renaissance. Mathematics in the Nile Valley was never separate from the divine. It was seen as a reflection of Ma'at, cosmic order. The balance of a clepsydra mirrored the balance of the world, water above and below, light and shadow, life and death. Even the placement of the bowl mattered. Some rituals required alignment with specific stars so that the vessel would flow in harmony with heaven. Later civilizations, including the Persians and Greeks, would expand on Egyptian innovations, adding gears and floats, but the purity of principle remained. The idea that time, space, and substance could meet in a bowl of dripping water was born from the desert stillness and the priesthood's brilliance. Modern physicists marvel at how well these timepieces understood flow rate, volume, and variance. But to the Egyptians, they weren't just solving equations, they were embodying them. And as water flowed, so too did truth. To view the Egyptian water clock solely as a timekeeping device is to miss the breadth of its magic. For the ancients, it was not merely a tool to divide the hours, it was a conduit, a bridge between realms. Through it, they transcended linear measurement and stepped into the ritualized rhythm of the universe. There is evidence to suggest that clepsydrae were employed in healing rites, not to count time, but to structure sacred pauses. Physicians, guided by the priesthood, would administer herbal infusions to the rhythm of water's fall, each drop a breath, a pulse, a moment of intention. Healing, then, was not rushed. It was calibrated. In other rites, the water clock measured the time it took for spoken prayers to rise. Certain chants, it is believed, were intended to align perfectly with the full drainage of a clepsydra. These were not haphazard verses. They were symphonies of syllables, precisely tuned to flow with water, offering resonance between body, voice, and the divine. The military too may have embraced these vessels. Some sources suggest clepsydrae were used to time-watch shifts at border outposts or during night patrols along the Nile. In the stillness, a guard would listen not for drums or bells, but for the last drip, a soundless rotation of duty. More mystically, the water clock became a symbol of reincarnation. As water emptied, it was believed to rejoin the Nile, the river of life and death, only to be reborn. Some tombs include small clepsydrae among the grave goods, not for practical use, but to guide the soul's journey through the duat, the underworld. Even in art, the clepsydra appears in curious places, sometimes held by deities, other times resting beneath altars, always discreet, yet central. It served not only function, but form, a visual metaphor for transience, and a testament that all things sacred flow. Thus, while modern minds may see only an ancient clock, the Egyptians saw a vessel of purpose, one that marked more than moments. It marked meaning. In the grand murals of Egyptian temples, gods bestow ankh and scepters upon pharaohs, symbols of life and power. Yet hidden among these sacred exchanges lies a lesser-known motif: vessels of water, sometimes pouring, sometimes still, held between deity and king. These are no mere libation jars. They are echoes of the clepsydra. To the ancients, time was a divine substance, not owned by mortals, but shared by the gods. The act of measuring time, drop by drop, was seen as permission granted by the heavens. And those who held that permission, the pharaohs, believed to be gods in flesh, were entrusted with its guardianship. Records from the reign of Amenhotep III describe ceremonies where a golden clepsydra was used to time each segment of the said festival, a jubilee of renewal for the king. Every chant, offering, and dance was measured to perfection, so that Ra himself might look upon the order and be pleased. In statuary, Thoth, the god of time and wisdom, is often seen holding a vessel. Scholars argue whether this represents ink or water, but to initiates, it is both, the fluid of knowledge, the ink of the cosmos, dripping into mortal understanding. More curiously, some temple inscriptions depict pharaohs anointing clepsydrae with sacred oils, as if preparing them not as tools, but as oracles. One particularly weathered frieze at Luxor shows a king pouring water into a vessel, surrounded by hieroglyphs referencing the balancing of worlds. Some royal tombs include miniature clepsydrae placed near the heart or head of the mummy. Their presence was symbolic, a reminder that even in death, the ruler remained the keeper of time, guiding the hours of the underworld. And so, in the hands of the divine and the crowned, the clepsydra transcended measurement. It became a key, a flowing relic of cosmic agreement, a covenant between sky and soil. Where the god touched water and the king measured it, order was born. The secrets of the Nile did not remain confined to its banks. Like the river's own floodwaters, knowledge spilled outward, carried by traders, scholars, and conquerors who sought not only gold and grain, but wisdom etched in stone and whispered in water. By the time of the late period, Egyptian clepsydry had begun to appear beyond temple walls. Artisans from Nubia to Mesopotamia took note of their construction, and soon versions began surfacing in lands far from the pharaoh's reach. In Babylon, engineers fashioned their own water clocks, remarkably similar in design, though often shaped differently to suit local belief systems. Clay tablets from the Chaldeans reference bowls that echo the hours, likely inspired by Egyptian devices witnessed during contact and trade. To these star-gazing sages, the clepsydra was both a calendar and a map of the heavens. The Greeks, too, became captivated. During the Ptolemaic dynasty, when Egypt was under Hellenistic rule, Greek scholars gained unprecedented access to temple knowledge. Philosophers like Ctesibius and Hero of Alexandria studied the water clock's mechanics and evolved them. They added gears, valves, and dials, creating intricate automata that mimicked the stars. Yet even as these innovations advanced, the core remained unmistakably Egyptian. The concept that water, simple, humble water, could measure cosmic flow, traced back to the Nile. In Rome, senators used clepsydrae to time speeches in court. In Persia, astronomers aligned them with moon phases. In India, Buddhist monks adopted them for ritual meditation. The vessel, born in Egyptian sanctuaries, became a global phenomenon. But with expansion came dilution. The sacred essence, so vital to the priests of Amun and scribes of Thoth, was gradually replaced by utility. The clepsydra, once a conduit of divine rhythm, became a tool of bureaucracy, of battle, of commerce. Still, echoes remained. A carving here, a motif there, a whisper in an archive. The empire might forget, but stone remembers. And in every culture that adopted the water clock, something of its origin survived, a trace of ancient Egypt flowing onward. All inventions age. Even those forged in ritual and mystery eventually fall silent. The clepsydra, once the pulse of temples and thrones, began to fade, not in disgrace, but in quiet surrender. With the rise of mechanical clocks in medieval Europe, the dripping of water gave way to the clicking of gears. Sundials remained as ornaments. Clepsydrae, less so. Their bowls were emptied, their inscriptions forgotten, their sacred rhythms replaced by ringing bells and ticking pendulums. In Egypt itself, as temples were closed and priesthoods dissolved, the knowledge of the clepsydra became esoteric. A few vessels survived, entombed beneath layers of sand and silence. Others were broken, recycled, misidentified as ceremonial jars or wine basins. Yet their absence did not erase their legacy. Historians, when stumbling upon fragments, found not just shards of pottery, but echoes. A line of symbols here, a curve matching lunar calendars there, a hole too precise to be accidental. In many ways, the disappearance of the water clock is part of its mystery. It did not die in fire or revolution. It simply withdrew, like a god whose era had passed. Perhaps it knew that the world had become too loud for silence to be sacred. But silence remembers. Today, as archaeologists dust off forgotten courtyards and recover vessels with delicate calibrations, they uncover not only tools, but intentions. They find proof that the ancients believed in harmony. That time was not a force to dominate, but a partner to dance with. That even in measurement, there could be reverence. And in those rare museums where clepsydra sits on display, Still and empty, it waits, not to be activated, but to be understood. For though it no longer ticks, its silence is still precise, still sacred. Centuries passed. The clepsydra slept beneath ash and earth, its voice muted by conquest, forgetfulness, and progress. But time, as always, has a way of circling back. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, a new generation of seekers, archaeologists, mathematicians, mystics, turned their gaze once more to the sands of Egypt. Driven by curiosity and wonder, they brushed dust from forgotten vessels, deciphered inscriptions, and saw in the ancient bowls more than just artifacts. They saw ideas. Clepsydrae were unearthed from Karnak, Thebes, and Abydos. Some were remarkably intact, others fragmented like riddles. What astonished researchers was not only their beauty, but their precision. Even after millennia, the inner markings aligned perfectly with calculated seasonal hours. The ancients had not merely guessed, they had known. Museums in Cairo, Berlin, and London began showcasing these marvels. Scholars recreated them, testing water flow, vessel shape, and mathematical accuracy. In some universities, engineering students now build clepsydras as tributes to forgotten ingenuity. The past, once sealed in myth, began to pulse again. More intriguingly, modern physicists and time theorists have begun revisiting ancient chronometry. The clepsydra's ability to adapt to variable hours, expanding and contracting with natural cycles, mirrors ideas in quantum timekeeping and relativistic perception. Could it be that the Egyptians were not just observing time, but experiencing it differently? Beyond academia, artists and architects have found inspiration in clepsydrae, installations that drip light instead of water. Temples of glass and sound where time is measured not in numbers, but in experience. Once again, the vessel flows not with H2O, but with meaning. In classrooms, children now learn that before clocks ticked and screens blinked, people measured time by the breath of water. And in doing so, they touched something timeless. To reawaken the waters is not to return, but to remember. And in that remembering, flow forward. What is the true measure of a civilization? Is it its monuments, its wars, its conquests? Or is it the quiet things, the ones that slip, drop by drop, through the cracks of time? The clepsydra, born from clay and reverence, was never meant to last forever. Its purpose was not to endure, but to remind us that time is more than motion, more than schedules or deadlines. It is feeling, flow, silence, and sequence. In the last drop that slips through a vessel's base, there lies a truth, that the ancients knew how to wait, to observe, to calibrate their lives not in haste, but in harmony. Their hours were not counted, they were honored. Today, in a world of digital precision and algorithmic alerts, the clepsydra seems almost primitive, but its legacy is profound. It teaches us that the act of measuring time can itself be sacred, that there is dignity in rhythm, that patience is power. In Egypt's tombs and temples, the water has long since dried, but the idea flows on. In each innovation that seeks balance, in each rediscovery that connects past and present, in every heart that beats not just to survive, but to synchronize. Let the clepsydra's final echo be this: time is not the enemy, it is the altar, and we, like the ancients, must approach it drop by drop. Even now, across ages and empires, we listen, not for the tick, but for the drip. The legacy remains.